Marhaba! Oppo squash, also known as calabash or bottle gourd, is available year-round, so you will pretty much always find it. These are harvested when they are young, about 10 to 14 inches in length, and usually run about a pound. When left on the vine to mature, they become bottle-shaped. Here at the bottom, they'll become a bottom shape, and that's when they're called bottle gourds. Now, I remember when I was a kid, there was a neighbor at the end of the alley, and she grew these bottle gourds in her backyard. She had so many of them, I'd never seen anything like it. So she explained to me that you let them mature and then pick them and let them dry, and then they can be painted. So she let me pick one, and then she dried it out for me, and several weeks later I got to paint it. So there you go. There's an art project here for the family if you decide to grow these at home. Now today what I'm going to show you is how to prepare this Oppo squash into something sort of like what we call kusa mehshi, where we traditionally trim the top, hollow them, and then fill them with ground lamb and rice, and then cook them on the stovetop. This recipe is inspired from that dish, but this has less steps and takes less time. Now, Oppo squash are full of vitamin A and vitamin C, and they're a good source of fiber. They have a smooth green skin with a white flesh, and it has a mild flavor, sort of like a blend of summer squash and cucumber. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to preheat a tablespoon of olive oil in a large skillet, and we're going to add a half a pound of ground chicken. Now you can do this with ground lamb or ground beef. The recipe that I've written is with ground beef, but I thought today we would do it with chicken. Now this is on about medium-high heat. And what we want to do is we just want to sort of stir fry this and browning it until it just, when we see no more pink. And we want to keep breaking it into small pieces. Now you can even, what really is helpful to break it into smaller pieces, is you can use a whisk, which really, when you keep pressing it with the whisk, it'll just keep breaking it into smaller pieces for you. And once it's no longer pink, then we're going to start adding our onions and our spices. Okay, so now, that's exactly what we want. We're going to go ahead and add 1.5 cups of diced onion. Now this recipe is on my website, Cooking with Kamal, and you can see it on YouTube. Now if you subscribe to my channel on YouTube, every time we post a new recipe, it'll automatically notify you, so that might make it a little more convenient for you. So now we've added our 1.5 cups of onions, and then our spices, salt, pepper, allspice, and cinnamon. The exact measurements again are in the recipe on my website. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to cook this. We're going to keep sort of stir fry this until the onions are tender and translucent. We're going to reduce the heat to about medium-low. Okay, so now the onions are softened and they're completely translucent, and this is exactly what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a tablespoon of tomato paste. Now again, if you open up a whole can of tomato paste and you only need a tablespoon, just go ahead and freeze the tomato paste, take it out of the can and go ahead and just put it in some plastic wrap and make it like in a cylinder and roll it and freeze it. And then you can actually slice off pieces as you need them. And that's like the perfect way to never let it go to waste. And this is a 1/2 cup of tomato sauce. Now we're using, in the recipe, we're going to need a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce anyway, so this is just a 1/4 cup of the tomato sauce taken from that. And we're going to add a tablespoon of toasted pine nuts. Now this is going to be our filling. This is our filling for the Oppo squash. I'm just going to mix this around until it is nicely evenly combined. And what this does is it's going to make, it's sort of like the glue that's holding the meat together, so that when we fill it into the squash, it's going to stay into place. It's completely nicely incorporated. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just turn this off, and we're going to set this aside until we need it to fill the squash. So now we're going to go ahead and get our squash ready. So the first thing that I like to do is I'm just going to go ahead and peel this squash. We can just... Now think you really do want to remove the peel. This is like, it's a little thicker. I've tried it not peeling it. I prefer it peeled. I just think it seems like it's a little more tender. You really want to go all the way down because we're going to go all the way onto the very base here. Now I'm just going to cut that stem, that base stem out and the top stem. So we're going to sort of almost like tip and tail this, but we just want to, there we go. And it really does have the fragrance of, it's sort of somewhere in between a cucumber and a summer squash. So it really has a nice flavor. Now look at that. It's just pretty. You could use that to even cut it up and garnish with. Now I just take this and I'm going to go ahead and just sort of cut this out because we want to keep as much of the squash as possible because it's, there we go. So that's that. And look, here we'll just, okay. And then on the base here, it's a little slippery, be careful. You just want to also turn it and get the little base stem out. Okay, now we're just going to cut the squash in half lengthwise. Now remember, it's a little slippery, so I always hold it to either side and then I cut. Just slowly, make sure you have a nice sharp knife. This way, it's a little safer. You might not, you don't want to cut your hands. So this outer part is the nice flesh, and that's what we're going to keep. And the inner part is the seeds and the softer flesh. And we're going to remove that. And by removing it, that's going to be sort of a channel. We're going to make it like a little canoe almost. And this is where we're going to be putting our meat filling to both halves. So I just lightly, you can actually see where this light fleshy part, you can see it, you can feel it. And then we're just going to take, now I use a grapefruit spoon. I just place this down on my counter, on my board, and look how that just cuts right out nice and easily. And the same here. And then I just remove this. Now you could take this and chop it up and make it into what we call aji. They're like these little small egg omelets, or you can just saute it in a pan with some onions. It's completely edible. We just need this space. See, there we go. So look at that. That's our, now I'm going to go a little bit into the neck here, only because I want our filling to go all the way into there. So that's one half of it. And then we will just repeat and do the same over here. You know, just lightly with the knife. Don't go too far down. You don't want to cut into the, you know, go right through the squash. And then with your grapefruit spoon, what I like is because, you know, the grapefruit spoon, it has these little teeth, not very sharp, but they still have an edge that look at that, they lift this right out. It's pretty easy. Comes out as one nice piece. And again, I like to just go up here to the neck. It's a little, you know, you'll know because it's just, it comes off very easily because it's like the softer flesh part. And again, I just want to do this because we need to make space for our filling. So see how they're like little canoes, and this is the channel that we're going to be filling. We're going to use a small baking dish. Now I use this small Pyrex. It's about 1.5 quart size. It's about 7 by 11. I just put a little bit of olive oil here in the bottom. And then I told you we're using a 15-ounce can of tomato sauce. We used 1/4 cup in the filling. So the rest of it we're just going to put in this Pyrex because this is what we're going to be baking our oppo squash in. I'm also going to go ahead and add 1/2 cup of boiling water to this. And 1.5 cups of frozen peas that I've thawed. Okay, and then we're just going to go ahead and mix that. So this is actually what we're going to be baking our oppo squash in. Okay, so now let's go ahead and fill the squash. So here's our filling that we made and set aside. Okay, so we just want to take about half, you know, just estimate what is half, and we're just going to keep filling it right in. You can go ahead and press it down into the little channel that we've made. And the reason we wanted the tomato paste and the sauce into the meat is see how it's like, that's what's making the whole thing hold together. And it's making it firm, and while it bakes, it's going to really keep it in there, and that's what we want. Make sure we go ahead and fill as much as we can, and I just sort of make it flush. If there's extra, I just go ahead and we can mound it over a bit, but it seems like it's going to be just the right size. Now, this Opa squash was about a pound. They can vary in size. You know, they can be a little bit larger or a little bit smaller. Usually, they really seem to be about this size. I would just, usually in this market, you'll see them, just try to find, weigh them. And if they're somewhere between 10 and 14 ounces, that's perfect. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to go ahead and put this here in our baking dish. See, and it's the perfect size for 2 of these. Now, if you decide to make more of this, you can obviously just you can double and triple the recipe, and then you can go ahead and just use a larger baking dish. You could even turn them sideways if you needed to put more of them in a larger baking dish. Now, what I like about this recipe, now this is one of the recipes, this is sort of one of my custom-made recipes. I like this because it sort of takes off on kusa, although there's no rice in this filling. I usually just prepare my favorite rice and put this on top of it. You can use your favorite grain, or you can just eat it like this. You don't have to have rice at all. Okay, we're just going to finish filling this and really get the filling right on up into this neck area. And the nice thing about these pine nuts, they really give it a nice flavor and a nice crunch. You'll see once it's baked and how we're going to slice it and serve it. Okay, so I'm going to put this one, I'm going to set it the opposite way. That way they both sort of fit perfectly. And then the rest of this filling, I'm just going to go ahead and add it. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and in a preheated oven, I have the oven preheated to 400. I'm just going to put a little bit of this sauce on top from now. We're going to spoon more on later. But we really just want to get some of the sauce so it'll bake into the squash and the filling. We're going to cover this with aluminum foil and we're going to seal it all the way around, and we're going to put it in the oven and we're just going to let it bake there for 30 minutes. I love the smell of when you're baking in the oven, either if it's fresh bread or something like this, vegetables and a sauce. It just smells wonderful. So now what we're going to do is we're going to remove this foil completely. And now we just want to drizzle, and it makes us see, and this is what we want. And it needs to be a little liquidy. Parts of it will be thicker than other parts. Like that. And we're just going to spoon this over, because we're going to return this to the oven for 10 minutes uncovered. And that'll thicken up the sauce just a bit. Now you could probably do other vegetables, if you wanted to. I just did the peas because I sort of like the flavor of them with this, but you could try something else, and I'm sure corn, just try it. And if you like it, that might be a good thing. I also would you could just do diced onions in this tomato broth. So there's lots of variations to this that you could just do on your own. And then of course, again, I used ground chicken. You could do ground lamb or ground beef, or you could just not use any meat at all. And in the inside, you could just do like an onion with garbanzo bean. So there's lots of different ways. You could fill these with quinoa if you wanted, and really make this a vegetarian dish as well. So we're just going to go ahead and put this back in for 10 minutes uncovered, still the middle shelf at 400 degrees. Okay, so the 10 minutes have passed. So let's go ahead and bring this over. Now look at that. See what this is exactly how we want it. The sauce is thickened up a bit. And what we're going to do, and see, and they're nice and tender. And that's what we want. We want the squash to be tender. Now you tried, and sometimes it might take a little longer to bake. You can always bake it a little bit longer. So we're just going to bring it I'm going to put it over, this is basmati rice with shairi. This is a recipe that's in the cookbook. Now this opus squash, this is one of my signature dishes. It's not in the cookbook, but the entire recipe is on my website. So we're just going to transfer this over to here. Look how beautiful that is. We're going to put this other one right next to it. I'm going to have it facing, I'll let it face this way. You can put this, once again, you can put this on a buffet. Now you can cut these into, you can just, see it's just, the knife just slides right through. See how beautiful that is? It's got the meat and the nice layer of the squash. And that's exactly, this is really how we want it. We want it to be tender. Okay, and then we can just take a spoon. Okay, we just get this. Look, we can drizzle. See, and I like the peas because I just like, first of all, I really like the flavor with this, but I also like the color that they give it. And then I like to sprinkle a little coarsely chopped parsley. Just think it gives it a nice sort of color. And then of course some pine nuts. I use another tablespoon, so a half a tablespoon for each half. Again, you can increase any of these things or delete them if you want. And there we go. Opus squash, stuffed opus squash with ground chicken. I hope you'll enjoy it. Sahtain, double health. I hope you'll enjoy this recipe and all the recipes on my website, cookingwithkamal.com, as well as the recipes in my cookbook, Classic Lebanese Cuisine. My cookbook has full color photos of each recipe with easy to follow step-by-step directions. You can purchase my book at all major bookstores in the USA, Amazon.com, international online book venues, and signed copies from my online store, shopkamal.com. The signed copy of the book also comes with a DVD with 41 tutorials such as opening kibbe, rolling dough, and even the best way to cut an onion. For your convenience, we also carry specialty ingredients and equipment at shopkamal.com. Until next time, happy cooking, sahtain, double health.